Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5 and episode number 714 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Thursday, August 14th, 2025. And I think, judging by the sky out there, it looks like it's going to be a nice day here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver, eh? And not with me as usual is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. A big thank you goes to our podcast founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Thank you so much for your support. Got a good show for you today. Hopefully. I always say we've got a good show for you today, but that's me kind of sort of pumping my tires there. You get to decide whether or not it was a good show. But hey, hopefully we got a good one for you. Kids and cubs, DAMFAM, how is your mental health today? I have to say I am doing okay. I'm a little tired this morning. Was a shorter night than I had hoped. Um, just, I was just energetic, I guess, yesterday evening. The last few days have been mostly travel, right? Quebec City back to Ottawa, and then last night I got back down here to the Beaver Lodge, preparing to travel again this weekend because it is my father-in-law ish. Not officially, but yes, my father-in-law's birthday over the course of the weekend. And even though my beaver sweetie is in Romania, because I am family, I still get invited to the party. Yay. So going there and celebrating that. So there'll be a trip to Toronto over the weekend. But other than that, things are pretty calm. But yes, lots of travel. And I guess when I finally got back home yesterday, I was just jazzed and buzzed to be home. And when it came time for bedtime, I was wide awake. So also, because I didn't leave the air conditioning on in the house the entire time I was gone on my vacation, of course, it was very, very hot here when we came in. And it took quite a while for the house to cool down enough to actually be able to go to bed and it being comfortable. So yeah, I think it was the 31 inside the house when I arrived. So which is hot for inside a house. So yeah, it took a little while to cool down. So a little sleepy when the alarm rang this morning. It seemed a little early, but in good spirits, absolutely, and happy to be with you, kids and cubs. Hopefully, your mental health is doing well today too. And if it isn't, well, hey, hopefully us here at the DAMFAM will help make that a little bit more bearable today. Since we are talking about you wonderful people here at the DAMFAM, let's just take a look into the magic monitor here and see who's here. All right. I see Kit Elaine here, wishing good morning to everyone, and Kit Nona Carol, wishing good morning to Elaine, and of course to everyone else, I am sure. We have Kit Hyper T007 here with his Buen dia, gente, and I have no idea what that next one word there is at all, so I'm not even going to attempt it. Kit Saucy here with us, and Kit Jillian as well. We also have Kit Sharon with us this morning. Good morning to you. So glad to see you here. Kit Moan is with us, and so good morning to you and to the entire family. Hope everyone is doing well. Kit Playing with 3D is here as well. Good morning to you. And yes, we do notice you. Noticing all of you. It's so lovely to have you. Kit Bucky is here with us saying good morning, all. So is Kit Tavi G saying good morning. So lovely to see you. Thank you so much. So is Kit Wishful. Hey, nice to see you. Good morning. And having a little bit of coffee here, I can see. Uh, so that's good. That's good. Kit Uncover the News is with us, keeping us updated. Good morning to you. So is Kit Linda M saying good morning. Hello, dear one. I hope you're doing very well. Kit PNC Bio is also with us saying good morning. Hello to you, sir. Kit Spanky Frankie. Hey, hey, hey. Nice to see you. Glad you're here. And is that everybody this morning? Let's take another look. Hopefully, we don't miss anyone because we want everybody to feel included. And I know some people, uh, you know, sliding across the plate just on the end, but I do believe that seems to be everyone. Oh, no, no, no. Kit Argosy Acres just caught it right at the end saying good morning, kits and cubs to everyone. All right, if I've missed you, hopefully I'll catch you a little later, kits and cubs. We have Kit Christian here. Uh, also, Keurigs are the shit, he is telling us today. So I'm guessing it's a coffee morning. Hopefully, and hopefully the Java is doing what is hoped for. And we have Kit Ibad as well here saying good morning, everyone. All right, and I do believe I have got everyone. Yes, I have. All right. Okay. And the word I could not understand was how you're supposed to pronounce the word gente, and I guess that I have been pronouncing it wrong the entire time. uh, I've yeah, I think it's sciente, and I had been pronouncing it incorrect. But hopefully, I will pick it up and get it better because I've been saying gente instead of sciente. And yeah, I can be taught. I can be taught. Eventually, I will get it. And now I can't find it anymore, of course, because I'm looking for it. Yes, there we go. Xian, Jianche. Jianche. Okay. Hopefully, you let me know how I did on that one. All right, kits and cubs. And so, yeah, lovely to see you here. Yeah, I guess you're right, Kit Lindam. Keurig could possibly also be doing tea pods as well as coffee. It might be a tea morning as well, which is just as good because on this show, we like tea, don't we? Yum, 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 yum. They have tea and hot chocolate as well. So there we go. Hey, there you go. Some Keurig info if you happen not to know. I did because I don't particularly drink coffee. So some things, there are certain things of which I'm blissfully unaware. Okay. Kids and cubs. Yesterday we talked a lot about wildfires because it's pretty much the big issue here. And yeah, a couple of updates for you this morning based on the most recent information I've been able to cobble. The fire burning near Miramichi in New Brunswick is still growing, and the Minister of Natural Resources, John Herron, says it can only be stopped by rain. Fortunately, there is some rain in the forecast and forecast to start this morning and continue through the day. Hopefully, that will help. But I'm thinking they need a lot, like a good solid 50 millimeters, and not sure if that's what's in the forecast. But hey, every bit helps. Um, Minister Heron says the descriptor of it being beyond control. I think I would use those words myself. It's a massive challenge for us. The best we can do at the moment is be able to steer the direction of that fire. As we mentioned yesterday, they are so far being successful at steering the fire away from the city there in Miramichi. The government has requested 2 additional super scoopers and 60 more firefighters, but also publicly acknowledged that there are a lot of other fires that also have needs. And, if that's not able to be met in that sense, that they can understand and will do the best with what they have. But, if anything can be moved and directed over there, additional, that would probably be helpful. In Newfoundland and Labrador, there are still fires that are burning out of control. The Martin Lake fire near Grand Falls, Windsor, doubled in size yesterday. Thousands have been ordered to evacuate, and in the area, all elective day surgeries are postponed. Basically, all elective day surgeries are postponed in St. John's this week due to staffing concerns as a result of everything that's happening here. It seems that the police are looking for a man in a case of suspected arson, as there were 4 brush fires reported in the city's downtown. I saw something about that being uh, crossing my feed yesterday here, and very, very concerning here. But this is according to CBC News here. It says the RNC, as the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary, is investigating several brush fires they believe someone purposely set in downtown St. John's Tuesday night. Emergency crews responded to 4 fires between 10:30 p.m. and 12:30 a.m. Newfoundland time, all close to each other on Lemarchant Road and New Gower Street, according to a news release sent by the RNC Wednesday afternoon. By early Wednesday evening, RNC Constable James Cadigan told CBC News police were actively pursuing a male suspect. St. John's Fire Chief Sherry Colford said the regional fire department was able to respond quickly and is equipped to do so, but she said it's worrying to see people intentionally starting fires. Colford said reporting suspicious burning behavior is a great way to help busy crews. Quote, just be aware and don't hope that someone else is going to do it for you, she said. St. John's Mayor Danny Breen said the person responsible for the fires created a dangerous situation, and he said this type of behavior needs to stop. He is quoted as saying, knock it off. There's no need for this right now, and adding this much extra worry to people in the city and tiring up resources. Mayor is not happy at all about this. The RNC says that no one was injured, nothing was damaged. Quote, cooperation is the key, Constable James Cadigan said. If you are not on the front line, you still have a role to play, and that has to do with supporting our first responders by allowing them to do their work. The entire province is under a fire ban as firefighting crews from both Newfoundland and Labrador and elsewhere in Canada struggle to deal with multiple wildfires that have forced hundreds to flee their communities. As well, in Newfoundland, Premier John Hogan has imposed a ban on ATVs on forested land until Sunday, with fines from 50 up to $150,000 and potential imprisonment being waiting for you if you should be caught violating this restriction. Quote, he says, we simply cannot take any further risk. I really hope people understand the seriousness. There have also been 3,000 people evacuated as a result of the Kingston fire. According to the weather, higher humidity in the St. John's area has meant decreased fire activity, and officials hope that the blaze just outside the city will soon be under control. So that is some positive news. Out in Nova Scotia, the fire near Bears Lake Industrial Park is said to now be being held. It seems that it has been determined that the fire was caused by human activity, despite the fire ban in the province. Forest Protection Manager Scott Tingley is quoted as saying, because the fire was related to human activity, it was an open fire. There was no one in the area when the crews arrived on scene. That makes it impossible to hold the person or people responsible to account. And yeah, that's frustrating to everyone. Yeah, whoever did that, thanks. Great job. And then Kits and Cubs, uh, across on the other side of the country on Vancouver Island, there is a fire burning about 12 kilometers from Port Alberni. Carly DeRosier, who's a fire information officer, says that the combination of drought, heat, wind, and steep terrain helped this fire to grow. Quote, the Mount Underwood wildfire is currently estimated at 2,156 hectares, so it has grown since the update Tuesday night when it was just around 1,400 hectares. That's pretty big growth in a small amount of time. The most active flank of the fire is the east flank, which is furthest from the community. And here, Kits and Cubs, we have a little bit of a news clip here for you to talk a little bit more about this particular one here. So there we go. And let's just get this set up for you.
A fire on BC's Vancouver Island continues to grow out of control today. The Mount Underwood fire is burning more than 10 kilometers south of Port Alberni, a small city home to about 19,000 people. Michelle Gassoub has been following the story for us today, and she joins me now. So, Michelle, the fire is growing rapidly. Take us through the very latest on this.
Yeah, the growth of this fire has been described as unusual and explosive. Last we heard, it was sitting at 1,400 hectares. We got an update just moments ago. It's now at over 2,100 hectares. This is burning around 10 kilometers south of Port Alberni. What we heard today is that it is this eastern flank that is of the most concern, is experiencing the most significant fire growth, and that eastern flank is also generating the smoke that is impacting the community. Now, the good news is, or the bad news is rather, that the fire was being pushed south yesterday. The wind has changed. The wind is now pushing the fire up and towards the community. Crews are on that northwest flank trying to create a barrier between the fire and the community. The northeastern flank is too dangerous for crews to currently be operating on. So that gives you a sense of the challenging conditions crews are facing as they try to contain this fire. The good news is that Port Alberni is not currently being impacted, though they are seeing that smoke. The China Creek campground was very quickly evacuated. Around 300 people very quickly needed to be moved out of there. It has also cut off the road between Port Alberni and Bamfield, which is a small community of around 180 people. That community has also had its internet cut off, power outages there as well, and they expect that could take a few days for them to bring that back. But though it is the closest to Port Alberni is not being impacted at this time. But something that fire officials said this afternoon was that the level of fire activity in this area is highly unusual. We tend to see this in the interior of this province, in the Okanagan, in the northwest, not on Vancouver Island and on the coast. Take a listen to them describing that.
That was quite aggressive fire growth in the matter of just a couple hours. That was quite significant and very unusual for not only Vancouver Island, where we generally don't see rapid fire growth, but even elsewhere in the province, that would be considered quite significant.
So unusual for the only wildfire of note in BC to be on the island. They say it is because the island has been experiencing drought conditions since May. Usually that is one of the areas of the province that is spared those drought conditions.
Okay, Kits and Cubs. So yeah, those are the updates that we have at the moment about the wildfire situation. Again, Kits and Cubs, in all these places where there may be additional evacuation orders, as we keep on reminding you on the show, please have an evacuation bag prepared with all your medicines and important documents, some water, at least preparations for food and water and stuff for at least 3 days. I would recommend at least a week. You'll never go wrong by planning to be away for a little extra longer than some people would hope, because some evacuations last a while. and have it ready to go, because you don't want to be looking for these things at the last minute. Sometimes, like you said, conditions can change very quickly, wind directions and intensity, and sometimes you don't have a lot of time especially time to get things together. So yeah. And of course, kids and cubs, if you have anybody living in these areas, please do remind them that there is a service called cbc.ca/light, LITE, cbc.ca/LITE, which is low bandwidth site for CBC, doesn't have as many pictures and all that kind of stuff in video. So if you're on the go and need to stay in contact with the latest information, but have low battery or not an opportunity to charge, it doesn't take a lot out of your phone. And that way you have a site where you can keep on getting some updates in terms of news. So please let everybody know, if you have someone in those areas that are affected, that this service is indeed available. I still haven't heard anything federally with regard to supports for people who are evacuated. Not so much yet provincially yet either, in terms of specific initiatives. Did hear from the federal minister, and I can't remember the name of her title all the time. Minister responsible. Well, of course, she's the minister responsible for Prairie's Economic Development Canada, but she's also Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience. Thank you, Eleanor Olszewski, reminding us yet again that the federal government is there and willing to coordinate and to provide help and assistance as needed. Again, these requests come from the provinces, and the requests have been varied. In some places, it's been more help with ensuring that evacuation centers and that type of stuff are properly stocked, and in other places there has been stuff like equipment and scoopers and military personnel and stuff of the like. So the federal government is doing their best to be able to coordinate that. There's also, pardon me, almost choked on my saliva there. Hold on for a second. I'll just have a sip of water. Wow. That caught me by surprise. And there's also been some discussion. I believe it was an interview with New Brunswick Premier Susan Holt that I saw with regard to the four maritime provinces getting together in the future after all of this has sort of taken place, and being able to coordinate with regard to inventory and things of the like, so that in future seasons it'll be easier to coordinate among them in terms of sharing resources if wildfires hit the region again, sort of like this, multiple spots in the same region. So hopefully I will be able to find a clip of her saying that, and I presented it a little earlier. I did have it singled out, but as you know, kids and cubs, every now and then I take notes, and sometimes the notes just vanish. And that was indeed the case yesterday. She was on Power and Politics, and I saw her say that, and I made sure to note the time. And then when I came to assemble the show before coming on this morning, that had completely disappeared. So, otherwise, I would be playing it for you right now, because to hear it from her would be much more interesting than to hear it from me. But yes, she was asked by Katie Simpson if there was any particular lessons that had been retained, and she spoke specifically about that coordinating function and the foresight that previous governments had in terms of ordering extra equipment to help fight wildfires, because they saw that this would be coming. And some people actually did do the work of planning for the future, and that some of the equipment that had been ordered back then happened to come online this summer to help with this particular effort. And so it looks that she is uh, given the current situation, looking to maintain that as a course of action in New Brunswick. And therefore, there might be some announcements coming soon, or relatively soon, probably not in the next few days, because, she's probably going to meet with her counterparts to talk about this when things seem to calm down a little bit, let's put it that way, or are more under control, and then come up with a list of things that the province might need to order and have on hand for future seasons. So, but it seems that she is indeed open to having that um, fit into her budget somehow as a purchase that will need to be made, because as we mentioned yesterday, this is the second worst wildfire season, and I think three of the worst we've ever had on record have all been in the last 3 years. So this is looking like the new normal. And if that's the case, well, then rather than having provinces cut funding for wildfire management and forest management and those types of things, as we've seen in Alberta and Ontario, it might be a better idea for them to start boosting those budgets and ensuring that there are equipments like the water bombers and the scoopers and all that type of stuff to be able to not only meet demand that is seems to be increasing in each individual province and territory here over the last 3 years. Different places have been hit, but it still seems to be that it is increasing overall. And of course, since this seems to be increasing overall around the world, to have resources on hand to help our neighbors who come over and help us when it's a wildfire season where they are. And of course, all of this equipment is on hand to help all other regions of Canada. And of course, often we help in the United States just as they help us and are helping us right now. There are crews from Utah and Maine, among other places, on the ground here in Canada helping us. So we thank all of the people who are offering their help. All right, kits and cubs, we can move on here a little bit. There is some labor action going on, kits and cubs, in the country at the moment that you might have heard of with regard to Air Canada and Canada Post. Um, Canada Post action started a little earlier. I believe that it has taken the form over the course of the last moment of an overtime refusal to work overtime from Canada Post. But on Wednesday, so that would be yesterday, according to Jan Simpson, the national president of, I'm going to guess it's the Canada Post's union. So the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, they put out um, a release yesterday stating where the situation was from their perspective. And it says here, after pressing the employer to come back to the bargaining table early last week, we received a response from Canada Post's CEO Doug Ettinger on Friday evening, just hours after we posted Bulletin 128. CUPW, that's the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, is waiting for Canada Post. In his letter, Mr. Ettinger stuck to the lines we've heard from Canada Post for many months now. And while Canada Post says it needs to act with urgency, the corporation seems to forget that it was its side that delayed negotiations for 2 months by requesting a forced vote, and this after the government paused our legal strike for 6 months. Canada Post suggested its best and final offers reflected the objective findings of the Industrial Inquiry Commission, but Canada Post failed to acknowledge that its offer just didn't cut it. They were overwhelmingly rejected by members. Mr. Ettinger told us Canada Post was open to continued discussions with the help of federal mediators. He suggested the best way to restart bargaining would be for the union to respond to Canada Post's best and final offers from May 28. But we've had enough discussions that go nowhere. The job now is to get ratifiable collective agreements, and the members have made clear that those do not look like what the employer is selling. Yesterday, August 12th, both parties met with the federal mediators. We have agreed to meet with Canada Post on Friday, August 15th and Monday, August 18th. In the meantime, the employer needs to stop sending customers away, offering steep discounts for Pure Later, and attacking services. The latest is not putting the flag up on rural mailboxes. It's time for Canada Post to get serious and negotiate now. Our national overtime ban remains in effect. In solidarity, Jan Simpson, national president. So that's a little bit what's going on here with Canada Post. There's a couple of other articles that have appeared lately talking about what has been going on here. But yes, let's see what we have here. So basically, if we're going back on the situation back to August 1st, that's when the unionized workers at Canada Post voted against the latest contract offer. According to CBC News here, it says that that offer had been turned down with 68.5% of ballots, or 23,440 cast by urban postal operation workers, according to the Canadian Industrial Relations Board, which reported an 80.4% overall turnout. So 34,228 of the 42,574 eligible voters. In the second vote, 69% of voters among rural and suburban mail carriers rejected the offer. Some 82.8% of workers turned out for that one. The vote came after more than a year and a half of talks with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, which represents about 55,000 postal service workers. Referring to Canada Post's final offers, a spokesperson said in a statement on Friday, well, this is said in a statement, I'm not going to give the date because we're looking at about 2 weeks ago now, that the Crown Corporation was, quote, disappointed in the results and would be evaluating its next steps. This result doesn't lessen the urgent need to modernize and protect this vital national service, the statement read. However, it does mean the uncertainty that has been significantly impacting our business and the many Canadians and Canadian businesses who depend on Canada Post will continue. The offer included wage hikes of about 13% over 4 years, but it also would have added part-time workers that Canada Post has said are necessary to keep the postal service afloat. Voting opened on July 21st after Federal Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu asked the Canada Industrial Relations Board to step in and put Canada Post's latest offer to a vote. So that's what the president of the union was referring to in her message, that there had been a vote that had been forced, and that delayed some progress in negotiations. So I'm guessing she's thinking that the time could have been better spent doing other things. Um, and at that time, the national president said that unionized workers had been urged to reject the proposal in order to protect the integrity of the bargaining process, and had criticized Hajdu for forcing the vote in the first place. Quote, by saying yes, we tell them that it's acceptable to ignore free and fair collective bargaining, dismiss our union's democratic processes and structures, and send a message to governments that it's okay to trample over your rights as a worker. And that was in a statement published on July 17th. Dan Kelly, the president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, said in a statement that the results added more uncertainty at a time when small businesses are already struggling to plan ahead. He called on Ottawa at the time to extend the current collective bargaining agreement for the foreseeable future, and added that, quote, the government also needs to immediately give Canada Post the full authority to make the major reforms needed to ensure it is financially stable. So once again, the president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business preaching to trample all over workers' rights, because that's what we've come to expect from this particular person here. It seems to be his consistent position over pretty much everything. He's been the president of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business for quite a while, Mr. Dan Kelly, and not much evolution, unfortunately. Yeah, you can pretty much predict what he's going to say. Yesterday's news from the Canadian press with regard to the talks with mediators that we mentioned, that Jan Simpson mentioned in the letter here. So there's a little bit more about that here. Hopefully there'll be additional information? Nope, it was just an announcement that said that they had agreed to those 2 days. But in there, it also says that a spokesperson for Canada Post says that while negotiations remain unresolved, there's still an urgent need to modernize the Crown Corporation. Quote, letter mail volumes continue to erode and competition in the parcel line of business places ever increasing pressure on the corporation's operating model, the spokesperson said. Canada Post says it looks forward to receiving a detailed and comprehensive response from the union that addresses the significant and increasing challenges faced by the Postal Service when it meets Friday. So hopefully we'll have additional news on that coming soon. But yes, so far it's just restrictions on the amount of overtime the workers are willing to put. And that's the only way in which the job action is being felt at the moment. Of course, if these discussions with the employer over the next 2 meetings don't go very well, there could be an escalation in that. And if I remember correctly, the dates that were chosen for those 2 meetings are the 15th and the 18th. So yes, so nothing probably won't get many developments. There might be some news about how things went after the first day of discussions at some point tomorrow, but before getting the full picture, unless discussions break off, because you know things are just so ornery and prickly during those discussions on the 15th. We should have a better picture sometime after the 18th, so early next week, about what next moves there might be in this labor dispute and what other actions the workers might be taking if there is not some satisfactory progress based on these 2 days of meetings. And at the moment, it doesn't seem that that's particularly hopeful because they've been negotiating for over a year and a half. And, well, this is the point at which they are now after all of that alleged effort. All right, moving on. And this is the one, Kits and Cubs, that has been getting a lot more attention over the past few days. But and we had talked about this a while ago on the show when it first started to come about. And I particularly remember Mr. Grizzly making a very impassioned argument for the fact that these workers deserved to be properly paid and paid for all their work and respected. And this here, we are talking of Air Canada. Because uh, basically the flight attendants have pushed for legislation to ensure that they're paid for ground duties, but so far that hasn't gone anywhere. And hopefully that might be a solution in the future if these negotiations don't go the right way. However, it seems that we're getting to a point that it looks like there will not be any resolution that will be able to prevent some type of strike here. So, according to CBC News, Air Canada says it will begin canceling flights today ahead of a potential strike that could see more than 10,000 flight attendants walk off the job this weekend. The country's largest airline said the gradual suspension of flights, which would see more cancellations on Friday before a complete cessation of flying by Air Canada and Air Canada Rouge by the weekend, would allow for an orderly shutdown. About 130,000 customers a day could be affected by a disruption, according to Air Canada. The Canadian Union of Public Employees, CUPE, gave the carrier a requisite 72-hour strike notice overnight after the two sides reached a, quote, impasse in negotiations on Tuesday. Air Canada flight attendants can walk off the job as early as Saturday at 12:58 a.m. Eastern Time. CUPE representatives said that in response to their strike action, Air Canada issued a notice of lockout to start at 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday. Air Canada confirmed the lockout on Wednesday. Quote, we regret the impact the disruption will have on our customers, our stakeholders, and the communities we serve, Air Canada Chief Executive Michael Rousseau said in a statement. CBC News had reached out to Air Canada for more information about its gradual suspension of flights. Air Canada Express flights operated by Jazz and PAL Airlines are expected to continue operating as normal. Air Canada had said that any passengers booked to travel between August 15th and August 18th can change their flight if desired, provided their ticket was purchased no later than August 13th. The airline was also going to allow these passengers to change their flight for free to another date between August 21st and September 12th. Quote, if your flight is canceled, we will do our very best to rebook you on the first available flight, exploring options with over 120 international and domestic carriers, the airline said in its on its website. Quote, as we are in peak summer travel season, we know that space will still be very limited. If your travel is disrupted, you can always choose a refund. Quote, on behalf of the flight attendants, obviously we are sorry and empathetic towards this, but we also need to bargain a collective agreement. And unfortunately, this was the next stage in the process. And this was a quote from Wesley Lasowski, who is the president of the QP component of Air Canada here. John Graddock, coordinator of the aviation management program at McGill University in Montreal, said Air Canada has several obligations to travelers under Canada's air passenger protection regulations. First, the carrier has to communicate flight cancellations and get in touch with travelers via text, voicemail, or email to advise travelers of their options. Usually that means finding another carrier at Air Canada's expense to fly you to your next destination within 48 hours of the arrival time on your original ticket. If Air Canada can't do that or the itinerary it offers you doesn't meet your travel expectations, it is obligated to issue a refund on the value of the ticket that the passenger holds. Quote, it won't be out of pocket, but you're going to be in a situation where your travel plans are going to be disrupted, said Graddock. Airlines are absolved of responsibility for compensating passengers if a delay or cancellation is outside of their control. But in this case, Graddock argues Air Canada's preemptive cancellations are within the airline's control. Any costs related to hotels and meals on those incurred while waiting for rescheduled flights will have to be covered by Air Canada, he said, noting passengers should be ready to present receipts and points to make their case to the airline. The airline and the union have been negotiating a new collective agreement since March, going over key issues like wages, work rules, and unpaid hours. Quote, it's quite disappointing that they stopped last night with regards to the proposals that were on the table, said Wesley Lasowski, president of the Air Canada component of QP, in an interview on Wednesday morning. Air Canada, like many other major airlines, doesn't currently compensate its flight attendants for the work they do before boarding and after deplaning, according to QP. Ground tasks include things like safety protocols and assisting passengers. So the entire pre-flight and post-arrival portions of the work are not compensated at all. At the moment, this is free labor. The carrier has proposed paying flight attendants 50% of their wage for work done on the ground, but the union is asking for 100%. Basically, the conflict is that the union says that they are not paid for this. Air Canada says that the overall compensation structure and the amount that people are being paid is such that these things are indeed included, but acknowledged during the negotiations, it seems, according to reports, that there could be a more visible way to account for that. And this is what they offered. So it seems to be a little inconsistent position as far as I'm concerned here, because if they're saying, if basically, the carrier has proposed paying flight attendants 50% of their wage for work done on the ground, but the union is asking for 100%. So if that 50% of their wage for work done on the ground is in addition, it's not a lowering of compensation, this, so that they get paid the same amount, but some of it is for on the ground and some of it is for in the air. And it's more visible that it is included, but if this is additional money, then it's kind of hard to make the case that the overall package was indeed including it. right? This looks more like, okay, fine, we will recognize that that's considered work, but we're only going to have to pay you. We're only going to pay you half. Well, no. If you're acknowledging here that it's work, then pay us the full amount, right? Our hourly salary for what we do on the ground as well as what we do in the air. Quote, Air Canada is not an anomaly in this, but coming out of a 10-year deal, this is something that we're trying to correct, said Lasowski, adding that there's been a big push globally for this kind of compensation to become the standard. So again, the last time that Air Canada and the employees signed a deal, they had signed a deal for 10 years. And part of the reason that there's this action, there are these requests, is that over the course of the 10 years, Air Canada employees feel that they have fallen behind similar compensation in Canada and in North America, and they're looking to get that adjustment this time. So last time they gave a very, very long-term contract for security, but over the course of a decade, things change in different places, and now they're looking for an adjustment. Wages also continue to be an issue. Christophe Hanbel, Air Canada's Vice President of Corporate Communications, said, quote, there's a huge gap still between the union's request and what we can offer. We offered an increase of more than 38% on global compensation, and that's been turned down by the union, he said in an interview on Tuesday afternoon. The union said the wage increases offered did not keep up with inflation, and they were unable to bridge the gap in negotiation. CBC News reported earlier Tuesday that CUPE had declined a proposal by Air Canada to resolve the talks through binding interest arbitration, and that both the union and airline were back to reviewing each other's proposals. That work went on past midnight Tuesday, but resulted in the union serving the strike notice almost an hour later. Quote, the employer rejected our final pass that we gave them on some monetary issues. We wanted to thoroughly review it, but really wanted the members to still be in the forefront of that decision, so it took a lot of discussion, said Lasowski. Federal Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu said in a social media post on Twitter Tuesday evening that she continues to monitor the situation. Quote, federal mediators will remain available until a deal is reached, she wrote. The best agreements are the ones the parties reach themselves. This has been a line that's been used often by the Liberal Party in recent years with labor negotiations, saying that the best deal is the one that is reached at the table. But in this case, it indeed appears like there are no talks going on at the moment. So yeah, and there's no interest at the moment from the union to engage in a binding arbitration. If it would be the case, the arbitrator would hear proposals from each side about specific agenda items that haven't been agreed upon, and then make a decision that would bind both parties. It would also suspend the chance of a lockout or strike. CUPE members voted overwhelmingly in favor of a strike mandate, as we mentioned, paving the way for workers to walk off the job as soon as, I think at the time I gave was 12:58 a.m. Eastern Time, right, on a Saturday. So, yeah, and let's see, what else do we have here about binding arbitration here. CUPE published a letter addressed to the president of its Air Canada component, Wesley Lasowski, and signed by Air Canada Vice President and Human Resources Chief Ariel Malul-Weschler on Wednesday. Quote, after 8 months of negotiation, we have been unable to reach a tentative collective agreement despite our best efforts, the letter says. Outlining the proposal, it adds that, quote, if we cannot agree on an arbitrator within 30 days of your agreeing to the proposal, we ask the Minister of Labour to name one. CUPE declined the proposal and intends to stay at the bargaining table, Lasowski wrote in a response addressed to Malul-Weschler on Tuesday. A representative for CUPE told CBC News that both sides are back to evaluating proposals after their exchange. Yeah. Binding interest arbitration tends to be preferred by employers, quote, because you are avoiding the strike and the business disruption, says Malini Vijay Kumar, an employment and labor lawyer at Nelligan Law in Ottawa. The federal government would first have to pass legislation forcing the parties to go to binding arbitration. So that would be something that's not on the menu for a while yet, as the House is not sitting until sometime, I think, past the second half of September. But that's a really risky thing to do, Vijay Kumar said, because the union could challenge it under a section of Canada's Charter of Rights that protects the right to strike through freedom of association. Quote, so even that's not a silver bullet, so to speak, to prevent a strike, she said, referring to the arbitration process. So yeah, let's see, what else do we have here? QP's Air Canada component represents more than 10,000 flight attendants who work for the major airline and its budget carrier, Air Canada Rouge. Some of those workers held demonstrations on Monday outside major Canadian airports in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, and Calgary for what the union called a, quote, day of action. The union says the most contentious issues at the bargaining table are wages, which it says have not kept up pace with inflation, and unpaid work that occurs before boarding and after deplaning, such as safety checks and assisting passengers. And let's see, QP said last week that it would continue talks with Air Canada until August 15th, the day before a potential strike on Saturday. I do not know if that is indeed happening, even though they say that they are staying at the table. It seems that the employer may have walked away from it at the moment, which means that there would be no talks currently going on. But there were earlier reports of talks having stopped, and as the article stated, talks did go on late into the night on Tuesday, and did continue for most of the day yesterday, according to oh, I can't remember his name all of a sudden. I'm so sorry, and I've been mentioning it over and over and over again. But the president of the Air Canada portion that's within QP, and I'm so sorry, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. That's terrible, especially considering that I've mentioned it a couple of times. There we go, Wesley Lasowski. I have a mind like a sieve today. Oh, okay. At the time, Air Canada said that its pay structure is in step with other global carriers. Delta Airlines is the only major North American airline that offers ground pay to its flight attendants, paying them at half their hourly rate for 40 to 50 minutes of boarding time, depending on the flight destination and aircraft. Porter Airlines, a smaller Canadian carrier that operates out of Toronto and several smaller cities, has started paying for at least part of the boarding time that its flight attendants work. So again, as we are noticing, there are certain other companies that have acknowledged it too, and that they're doing it. But unfortunately, it seems that they are not paying that 50% for the entirety of the time that they are working on the ground, only a portion of it. So that is also something that it seems was at issue here, and that allowed the president of the Air Canada component at QP to get to the point where we are now. It seems that was the same situation here, that if there was an hour and 45 minutes or whatnot of on the ground work, that the employer was offering to compensate it at half the compensation for all the other work, and not even for 100% of that time. Not the best. It says here, I have for you, kids and cubs, it was on Power and Politics yesterday, a little bit of a discussion that had taken place between host at the moment, taking the reins because David Cochrane is on vacation here, Katie Simpson, and the president of the QP component of Air Canada, with regard to the labor action. And here, to start off, he is, as I mentioned, correcting the impression that to cut off before they actually had.
We are joined by Wesley Lasowski. He is the president of the Air Canada component of QP. Thank you very much for joining us. I want to just start with, is there any sort of update you can share on negotiations or plans to negotiate? What's sort of the status here?
Yeah, so I'll just make a few corrections. So the union has been at the table all day today. We have met with federal mediators, my apologies, twice. We were at the table until just shy of 2 a.m. this morning as well. As you know, we served the strike notice, and that was to apply pressure to get the company to come back to the table. So we're prepared to negotiate. We're just waiting for the company to realize that they need to play a part in those negotiations as well.
So are negotiations actively happening in this moment?
So nothing has come back from the employer, nor has the employer come back to us on things. So I would say that there is no negotiating going back and forth, but the union is here waiting to negotiate when they're ready.
Okay, so how would you describe, in terms of how far apart things stand between the union and Air Canada at this point?
There's two big sticking points, I'll call it, and that's the overall wage compensation, as well as the portion of unpaid work.
Okay, and so has there been any progress sort of in the last 24 hours around those issues, or would you say the two sides remain far apart?
I would say the two sides remain apart. I wouldn't say far apart. We've gone back to the employer with proposals. They just haven't engaged or come back with anything. We have altered our proposals while going back as well to get engagement, but again, nothing has come back to them from them.
Now, Air Canada previously requested government-directed arbitration. Is that something that you see as a viable option at this point?
I don't see it as a viable option, and we're coming out of a 10-year collective agreement. Within that 10-year collective agreement, we fell so far behind. So what we're asking for is to be brought up to where we need to be, comparable to other airlines in Canada. We also, have been told by the government that the best deals are negotiated at the table, and that's what we want to do, is negotiate something so our members have an opportunity to ratify it and both sides leave happy, protecting obviously the careers that we want and the brand and Air Canada.
When you look at the deals that other airlines have, what would you say is the gold standard that you're aiming for here?
That's a hard question. You look around and see different airlines out there, whether it's in the States or whether it's in Canada. But what we're looking for here at Air Canada, and what our members have clearly directed us with such a strong strike mandate, is they want industry-leading compensation in wages, and they want unpaid work to be a thing of the past. They don't want to have to be doing the safety aspects that they're currently doing with no compensation.
During the last session of Parliament, both the Conservatives and the NDP had come forward with bills to amend the Labour Code to ensure that flight attendants would be compensated for those pre-boarding and post-landing duties. But it hasn't, because Parliament was prorogued, it didn't happen. Do you have any indication whether the Liberals support this? You've got, the opposition supporting it. Do the Liberals support this?
We have never heard directly from the Liberals of their strong support. What we have heard is that it needs to be done at the bargaining table, and you need to bargain it, you need to move it forward there. I do know that the NDP has said that they're going to reintroduce it. I do know that we've heard that the Conservatives, as of last week, again, support it and say it needs to be a thing. I don't think it's dead in government. I think it'll go back to government. I think that's the best place for it to have been settled. But unfortunately, here we are, and now it's been left on us by the government, unfortunately, to settle in this contract discussion.
So, kids and cubs, with regard to what they're talking about here, it seems, again, this is Darren Major from CBC, who is reporting on this, and says here that flight attendants poised to strike this week have previously asked the federal government to address one of their biggest grievances, unpaid work. The Canadian Union of Public Employees gave Air Canada a 72-hour strike notice early on Wednesday. In response, the carrier issued a lockout starting at 1:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, and says it will begin canceling flights on Thursday. The two sides had been negotiating a collective agreement since March, and the union says the most contentious issues at the bargaining table, as you had just heard, are wages, which haven't kept up with inflation, and unpaid work. Here it says, in the article later on, while it is a sticking point in the current labor dispute, flight attendants from a number of carriers have been calling on the federal government to make changes to the Canada Labor Code to address unpaid work. Quote, "It's not a huge ask, really. All people are asking for is to be paid for their time on the job. It's a very problematic situation, not just for Air Canada flight attendants, but flight attendants across the board. Pouliot said flight attendants reached a breaking point due to ground delays experienced as Canadians slowly began flying again following the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yes, I remember during that time. There were indeed lots of delays, so that was a lot of unpaid work probably at that time. Both the Conservatives and NDP introduced bills last parliamentary session that would have changed the Labour Code to ensure flight attendants are paid for pre- and post-flight duties, but both bills died when the House was prorogued earlier this year. Pouliot said it's encouraging to see opposition parties supporting the changes, but said it's tragic and confounding that the Liberals haven't backed the move. Quote, I think you would be looking at a fundamentally different situation at Air Canada right now if the Liberals, a year and a half ago, had decided to play ball with the other parties, he said. Wesley Lasowski, a flight attendant and president of CUPE's Air Canada component, told CBC News that he thinks the government ultimately needs to step in. Quote, we feel it should be addressed through the government and shouldn't be used as a bargaining capital at the table. When asked by CBC News, a spokesperson from Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu's office didn't comment on whether the Liberals would support changes to the Labour Code to address flight attendants' concerns, but they encouraged Air Canada and CUPE to reach an agreement. I don't understand that. I mean, not answering on that and says, but yes, but we want you to reach an agreement. Well, they've been trying to reach an agreement and they haven't. And they wouldn't have to reach an agreement on whether they are paid or not. If there actually was legislation, that would be the law. Then they would just have to agree on how much, but not whether. Quote, during the bargaining process, parties establish agreements on wages, working conditions, and other employment terms. Mediators will remain available until a deal is reached. The minister is closely monitoring the situation and encouraged both parties to stay at the table until a deal is found, the spokesperson said in an email. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre and Conservative Labour critic Kyle Seaback wrote a letter to Hajdu last week calling for the Liberals to make the Labour Code changes. Quote, and this surprises me from the Conservatives, to be totally honest, but hey, again, I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth here. No other federally regulated worker would accept being on the job without being paid, and neither should flight attendants. It's time to end this outdated and unfair practice, their letter reads. Speaking to reporters Wednesday, Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Garner reiterated her party's stance. Quote, as somebody who is a frequent flyer, I think they should be paid for pre- and post-flight duties, Rempel-Garner told reporters on Parliament Hill. I hope that the union management can come to an agreement on this, but certainly the principles that were contained in that bill last year are things we stand behind as a party. And they had put out a letter here, and the letter says, and I'm going to blow it up here so that I can read it. This is signed by Pierre. Dear Minister Hajdu, I am writing to urge you to amend the Canada Labour Code to I pronounced that really weird, didn't I? I am writing to urge you to amend the Canada Labour Code to require that federally regulated airlines pay flight attendants for all hours they are on duty, not just the time spent in the air. Today, many airlines begin paying flight attendants only when the aircraft's doors close, the plane pushes back, or the wheels leave the ground. But crews are expected to arrive well before that to conduct safety checks, assist boarding passengers, handle delays, and perform other duties. They remain on duty after landing to assist passengers and complete post-flight tasks. All of this is work, yet much of it goes unpaid. No other federally regulated worker would accept being on the job without being paid, and neither should flight attendants. It's time to end this outdated and unfair practice, which is why in the last parliament, Conservatives introduced Bill C-409, which would have ensured that flight attendants are paid for their pre- and post-flight work time. I urge your government to update the Labour Code to ensure flight attendants are paid for every minute they're required to be at work from check-in to sign-off. These professionals play a vital role in our transportation system and deserve compensation that reflects the full scope of their responsibilities. Sincerely, Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and Kyle Seaback, Shadow Minister for Labour. You know what? For once, I'm going to give props to Conservatives for actually doing a decent thing. It happens now and then. Now, of course, this is a party that supports right-to-work laws. So, I mean, can't give them that big of a cookie. But on this, they actually have it correctly. The NDP announced Wednesday that it intends to reintroduce its own bill this fall. Quote, every hour worked should be an hour paid, interim NDP leader Don Davies said in a statement. The Liberals have done nothing to stop major airlines from exploiting their workers, most of whom are women. Instead, they handed those same airlines billions in taxpayer dollars. Workers deserve better. As we mentioned earlier, Delta Airlines and Porter do pay some people. Smaller carriers such as Pascan Aviation pay full salary for ground duties. So there are some carriers that do pay full salary. But Don Dave, hold on, sorry. I've got a name here, Pouliot, but I don't know who that refers to here in the article. I don't remember seeing it previously. So I cannot tell you who it is. I can't attribute it here. Oh, there we go. QP spokesperson Hugh Pouliot says that the issue of unpaid work could spill over into future labor negotiations with other Canadian airlines. Quote, if the government is interested in labor peace in the airline sector, then this is absolutely a priority. To whatever extent it's resolved with Air Canada, it's going to be an issue for WestJet, it will be an issue for Flair, it will be an issue for Air Transat, it will be an issue for all the carriers in the country, because at every single one of these airlines, flight attendants are beyond exhausted with working so many hours for free. It's going to stop one way or the other. So this says Mr. Pouliot here to end of that. So yeah, if it is going to, I mean, yeah, it would need the support of the government, of course, unless everybody else in the House votes for it, because it is a minority situation. If the government doesn't want to vote in favor of that, I do not see any reason for which the government should not want to vote in favor of this in particular. So it would seem indeed, even on just on PR grounds, if the NDP and the Conservatives actually agree on this, and the Liberals would be the one that would be holding back, it would be a terrible, terrible, terrible look. There would be nothing to be gained PR-wise here from opposing it from the government. So I assume the statement that it is going to happen one way or another actually is rather accurate in this case, and not just puffing the chest. We have here in the chat, and thank you so much for this, Kit Hyper T 007, mentioning that it actually is not strange that different portions of work would be compensated differently. And I'm trying to, I put it on display earlier as the thing, as the clip was playing, but here it says here, I kind of get where they're coming from with that one though. At my work, I get paid differently hourly rates depending on the specific job I'm doing. And he says here, so I get paid X number of dollars an hour to drive, but if I get called in for warehouse work, I get, and it's about $9 an hour less for that portion. Then it switches over back to the higher rate when I start driving. So yes, I guess it's not different or not unheard of in certain industries that said driving and warehouse on the plane and pre and post plane, that those could be compensated at different rates. So thank you for bringing that to my attention, because that's something I was actually not aware of before you mentioned it. So I'm going to be going to bed a little more informed to know that this is actually a compensation structure that exists and in other industries. So thank you for bringing that knowledge to the chat and to the show, Kit Hyper T. I would not have known that, and it was missing from my repertoire of knowledge. And now I know, and I know better. So thank you. So yeah, that's what we have here. Of course, right, for people who are, there's a lot of people who are going to be disrupted. That's definitely a case. You do need to be a little bit more aware if you're going to be affected by this to passenger rights. So according here, there's a little bit about this from Global News, Uday Rana, but you probably want to research this more if you are affected, because there are things and games that are played, and you want to be sure that you are not giving up some compensation to which you are due. But here, according to Global, it says talks between Air Canada and the union representing its flight attendants are heading towards a work stoppage this weekend after the union officially gave its strike notice to the airline overnight. But if you bought Air Canada tickets, you might be wondering, can you get a refund and what should you do now? So, based on this here, it says again that the first flights will start being canceled today. So if you're asking what your rights are here, according to the Canadian Transportation Agency, suspension or cancellation of flights due to labor disruptions such as strikes or lockouts is deemed outside the airline's control. However, this does not mean that passengers are left without options. The airline must provide you with status updates and work to complete your travel as soon as possible, but is not required to provide compensation under air passenger protection regulations. Any passengers worried about their travel being disrupted should contact the airline to confirm their travel dates and ask what they should do to prepare. They should also regularly consult the airline's website to determine if it has implemented a policy dealing with this situation for ticket holders, the CTA said. Air Canada said in its Wednesday statement that customers whose flights are canceled will be notified and can obtain a full refund. Customers without confirmed flights should not go to the airport, it added. The refund can be obtained on the Air Canada website or on the Air Canada mobile app. The airline said it is also working to make alternative travel arrangements for customers. Passengers don't have to accept compensation for cancellation if they'd rather have alternative transport arrangements, said Gabor Lukács, president of the advocacy group Air Passenger Rights. Quote, from Air Canada's perspective, the best outcome in the case of a strike is give you a refund for a flight they cancel and wash their hands from your alternate transportation. Don't fall for that, he said. So in other words, if this is a trip that you really must do or want to do, and Air Canada is offering you compensation to not take the trip at all, you are not forced to accept that offer. You can turn around and say, no, I insist, I really do want to make this trip, and their Air Canada is obligated at their cost to book you on the first available flight that they can find. And when that happens, also make sure that that is indeed the case. If you see a flight, like look up where alternative flights are coming from if you have the opportunity, and if there's one that you would like to be on, take note of it, because Air Canada might offer you a flight that leaves later than that one, and then you can point to it and says, yes, but there's an earlier flight leaving here, I want to be on that one. And you might be able to negotiate that and not take the offer that is given to you, especially if it's not the first one. All right. Quote, if you voluntarily accept a refund, then Air Canada can possibly argue, quote, a passenger chose a refund and we no longer owe them alternate transportation. But if you say, no, I won't accept the refund, give me alternate transportation, and they fail to do so or refuse to do so, then they owe you compensation for your alternate transportation costs, he said. Air Canada said it is working with other airlines to provide alternative transportation for passengers. Quote, the company has made arrangements with other Canadian and foreign carriers to provide customers alternative travel options to the extent possible. Customers will be notified of alternative travel options that are identified for them. However, given other carriers are already very full due to the summer travel peak, securing such capacity will take time and in many cases will not be immediately possible, the statement added. The airline said it has implemented other measures to mitigate the impact of a strike or lockout. Quote, this includes implementing a flexible rebooking policy for all customers so they can change or defer travel at no additional cost, the statement said. If your travel has been disrupted and you're not satisfied with how an airline resolved your issue, you can file a complaint with the CTA. Experts say your travel insurance might cover travel disruptions, including from a strike or lockout. Quote, if your travel insurance policy covers trip cancellation, interruption, delay, or missed connection, and a strike is listed as a covered reason, you may be reimbursed for prepaid travel costs that Air Canada or other providers won't refund, said Will McAleer, spokesperson for Travel Health Insurance Association of Canada. He added that any insured travelers should check whether this He said that any insured travelers should check whether this met the definition of a known event back when they booked their flights. Quote, many travel insurance brokers may indicate when the threat of a strike became a known event, Policies purchased prior to this date may include coverage, but those purchased after may not. Um, so there you go. Some little additional information for you, kits and cubs, as sometimes having the right information makes life a little easier, especially when you need to advocate for yourself. All right. I think that's all I have with regard to the wildfires and the potential labor disruptions. Hopefully, kits and cubs, none of you will be too adversely affected by either of them. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens next. And particularly with this particular government, with the new leader who's more business minded, because the previous one seemed to be a little more pro worker under Trudeau, with a lot of these strike actions in the earlier days being left to be resolved at the table, and that government not interfering with arbitration and that type of stuff. But near the end of their mandate, a couple of times calling the Canada Industrial Relations Board to try to change or uh, help some situations along. Let's put it that way. Sometimes much to the dismay of the NDP and, of course, the workers. But in cases where shutdowns of those industries could have had larger collateral economic impacts, the worst sometimes where the federal government interfered. And in this case here with Canada Post, of course, there was the interference with asking the Canadian Industrial Relations Board to actually hold a vote on the offer that the employer was making, even though everybody was from the employee side was saying that it wasn't sufficient, and forcing the vote anyway so that there could be something on record. And as the union said, it would be rejected, and they urged rejection, and that's indeed what they obtained. All right. So, since we've done that, let's move over to a couple of other topics, kits and cubs, that we have for you here. And one of them here is with regard to the military. Kits and cubs, it seems that there was some movement on a promise by Prime Minister Carney a couple of days ago. And during the course of the election, and I'm not sure if this was an election issue or it came after with it, but when the Prime Minister surprised the nation by stating that he was going to increase or reach the 2% of GDP spending. That let's try that again because it didn't come out right. When the Prime Minister surprised the nation by confirming that we would reach 2% of GDP spending on defense, as NATO had been requiring. Of course, the requirement has now changed, but would be completing that by the end. I think, is it this or next fiscal year? Can't remember off the top of my head what the promise is at the top of my. I'm gonna guess by the end of next fiscal year, or well, yeah, I guess this one because we're in the middle of it. Yeah, by April 2026. So yeah, that would be this fiscal year. I'm a little mixed up in my dates. And he said that one of the ways to do that would be by increasing compensation for military pay and benefits, and that this would also help with recruitment and retention. Well, there has been an announcement with this, according to Murray Brewster of CBC News. The Liberal government announced its long-promised pay increase for members of the Canadian military on Friday, unveiling a graduated series of salary top-ups and incentives that will help the lowest-ranking soldiers, sailors, and air crew the most. Prime Minister Mark Carney delivered the news during a media availability at the country's largest military airbase in Trenton, Ontario, fulfilling a leadership and campaign promise. Okay, so it was a campaign promise. I couldn't remember that off the top of my head. The pay and allowance increase will cost $2 billion per year, and the pay bumps are retroactive to the beginning of the fiscal year in April. The spending is part of an additional $9 billion for defense that Carney announced earlier this year to meet Canada's NATO commitment. Quote, these increases in paying incentives will help us to revitalize and transform recruitment and retention to bolster force readiness and to ensure that members in uniform have the confidence and certainty that they need, Carney said. It's a generational shift, and we're proud of it. Senior defense officials speaking on background at a technical briefing prior to the Prime Minister's announcement said the last comprehensive overhaul of the pay and benefit system took place a generation ago in 1998. Several weeks ago, Defense Minister David McGuinty had suggested the pay increase would be 20% across the board. Carney had also suggested the same, raising a great deal of expectation in the ranks. On Friday, Carney defended the decision not to issue an across-the-board increase. Deb Lowther, CEO of Vets Canada, a Halifax-based charity that helps both former and sometimes current members of the Canadian military, was pleased with what she saw. The economy, especially since the pandemic, has hit the lowest-ranking members hard. Quote, we are supporting more and more serving members who are coming to us in crisis, said Lowther. Just as an example, we've just opened a food bank in Halifax, a veterans food bank. That concept just blows my mind. But we have 5 clients who are still serving, so there's struggles there, and we see it every single day. So this will help a lot. Lowther added, however, the government now needs to pay more significant attention to the transition system for those members who choose to hang up their uniforms. There are, she said, some significant gaps. And that's true. That's a statement that's been made many times. I remember discussions about this in the past, was trying to find a way to make that transition completely and totally seamless, that there would be a way for the Military and Veterans Affairs to have one system that allows people leaving the military to pass from one to the other without any cracks on the sidewalk forming, and that would be part of the actual departure process, would be the handing over of that file in a very, very seamless way, and that nobody would be discontinued from salary and benefits from military until the other portion was ready to kick in, for example. The way the new system unrolls, the lowest ranks of regular force, privates, ordinary sailors, and aviators will get a 20% boost. Reserves will get 13%. Non-commissioned members, junior officers up the rank of naval commander and having trouble today. Non-commissioned members, junior officers up the rank of naval commander or lieutenant colonel, will receive a 13% pay hike. For officers of the rank of colonel and above, the increase will be 8%. To recruit and hold on to people, there will be a bonus of 10,000 people. A bonus of $10,000 for recruit. That's me being a little bit tired from having a short night happening, kits and cubs, me changing words in the article and tripping over my tongue. To recruit and hold on to people, there will be a bonus of $10,000 for recruits in stressed trades to complete basic training, an additional $20,000 when their training is completed, and another $20,000 once they have completed their first term of service. The Department of National Defense is also increasing a series of posting and hardship allowances, as well as creating new ones. For example, members of the military are paid a bonus when on deployment overseas or at sea. Given the frequency troops have been asked to carry out domestic operations, the department is now introducing an allowance for deployments at home and in the Arctic. Troops forced to live away from their families will get a bigger stipend as part of the changes. Military members who are asked to move frequently will get a higher allowance. The department is also delivering a targeted benefit to encourage and retain members who conduct training. The military has struggled to recruit and train and retain members. Defense officials on Friday acknowledged that they are short 12,722 personnel, both regular and reserve force. An internal report assessing the military effort to retain troops obtained by CBC News said 76% of Canadian Armed Forces occupations were in critical shortfall. The report, entitled Evaluation of Canadian Armed Forces Retention, was dated April 2025, but relied in some cases on data from 2024. Defense officials on Friday provided a lower number in terms of the overall critical shortfall, suggesting only 40% of the occupations within the military are staffed below 75%. They acknowledged, however, certain jobs are under a lot of stress. The internal documents show maritime technicians, Army signal operators, and Air Force technicians are among the most stressed trades. Gaël Rivard-Pichet of the Conference of Defense Associations Institute gave the plan a favorable review. Quote, I think this makes a job with the Canadian Armed Forces more attractive for the average Canadian, she said, especially when we consider the lack of employment opportunities in the current economy. So yes, some good moves here from the federal government, and it is nice indeed to see that a promise is indeed being kept. Um, on this issue, the global issue of getting that $9 billion out the door. So here we have a plan for at least $2 billion of that. Experts say there are risks and serious challenges to hitting this year's NATO's target. And this is from Karina Roman, also of CBC News. Prime Minister Mark Carney's goal of hitting NATO's defense spending target of 2% of gross domestic product this year will be an uphill, nearly impossible battle, say experts and critics. An extra $8.7 billion is earmarked for defense spending by the Department of National Defense or other government departments, and $370 million for the Communications Security Establishment, the CSE. Allies had been pushing Canada to meet NATO's goal for nearly 20 years, but actually doing so became imperative with Donald Trump in the White House. Quote, Mark Carney's words are right, but he's got to crack the whip here real quick, said John Ball, a former Canadian defense industry executive for nearly 4 decades and now consultant. NATO defines defense expenditures as payments made by a national government specifically to meet the needs of its armed forces or those of allies in the alliance. Conservative MP and defense critic James Bazan warns it will be difficult for procurement officials inside government to reverse a long-standing culture of risk aversion, deferred decisions, and allowing billions of dollars in lapsed spending. Quote, by the time we get back into Parliament and a budget is passed, we're going to have half a year to spend money that the department won't be able to shovel out the door, Bazan said in an interview with CBC News. He wonders if the government will just engage in a game of creative accounting to meet its NATO commitments on paper. But some within the Canadian defense industry, as well as D&D and Public Services and Procurement Canada themselves, point to existing mechanisms that can be leveraged to move quickly. Those include the use of standing offers, supply arrangements, and pre-qualified vendor lists, as well as strategic partnerships with defense companies identified as centers of excellence, bilateral partnerships with other countries, and the U.S. Foreign Military Sales Program, or FMS. In situations that are truly time sensitive, the government can invoke a national security exception, NSE, urgent operational requirements, UORs, or issue an advanced contract award notice, ACAN, although these have strict eligibility criteria and are not everyday tools. Quote, if the government can demonstrate to us this is in the interest of national security and there is a limited availability from a competitive factor, we would be open to those types of procurement, said Bazan. But we can't make a habit of using NSE's national security exceptions as a way to get the equipment that we require for the Canadian Armed Forces. Carney outlined on June 9th the general areas for increased investment but gave no specifics. The list included better compensation, healthcare and infrastructure for personnel, new equipment such as aircraft, armed vehicles and ammunition, expanding the Canadian Coast Guard and moving it under D&D, repairing and maintaining existing ships, aircraft and other assets, and developing new drones and sensors to monitor the seafloor and the Arctic. We think it's largely going to be made up of items that are already identified or some that have been languishing in the procurement pipeline or projects that were underfunded, said Christian Cianferrani, President and CEO of the Canadian Association of Defense and Security Industries, or CADSI. One way to spend faster would be to expand existing orders for armored vehicles, ships, and planes. For example, augmenting an existing contract for 360 light armored vehicles from General Dynamics Land Systems in London, Ontario, a company spokesperson says, would be able to quickly respond to contract amendment requests. But if the government intends to buy equipment not already on order or in the inventory, Cianferrani argues D&D and PSPC have to change their approach. And again, PSPC, that's the Public Service Procurement operation here. Quote, there should not be a protracted procurement process, she said. Probably a good portion of that $9 billion could be spent on Canadian firms. The Prime Minister has explicitly stated that part of the goal is to build up the Canadian defense industry, while acknowledging that continuing to do business with allies, including the US, will remain necessary. Chan Farani is far alone in her concern over Canada's procurement process. One of the main reasons critics argue spending $9 billion in less than a year is doubtful. PSPC says its preference is for open, fair, and competitive procurement, but many argue the process is overly long, and in some cases merely a box-ticking exercise where the winner is a foregone conclusion. Quote, why did they do it? They did it to appease, said Ball of those requests for proposals that already have a preferred candidate in mind. Chan Farani says it's frustrating for firms to spend millions on a bid for which they never had a real chance. She said it would be better to engage in directed procurement more often, as is done in other countries, where the government knows what it wants to invest in and who the best suppliers are, and then it chooses them. But Bazan and others warn of the risk of boondoggle increases if the rush to spend money also means hurried oversight. Quote, talking about going to 2% and higher down the road doesn't mean we give license to spend money frivolously, said Bazan. Those in the defense industry argue that they too want to make sure there's value for money. Quote, I use the phrase deliberate urgency in that we need to think about how that money impacts the Canadian economic situation, said Chris Pogue, a former Royal Canadian Air Force pilot and now president of Calian Defence and Space. I don't think we should let urgency overcome smart procurement, but things can move quickly if we have a sense of the direction we want to go and the kind of capability we need. Pogue said capabilities around sovereignty need to be homegrown, such as equipment and supplies needed for operations in the Arctic. An additional challenge is that most defense spending, at least on the capital side, is spent and accounted for over a number of years. But a senior government official says they truly plan to increase defense spending by $9 billion before April. That said, the government continues to describe both the amount and the deadline as targets, not certainties. So that was reporting from Karina Roman here with regard to that. On this front, Kits and Cubs, there has been some movement here when we talked about the labs. I believe this might be here. I'm wondering if this is the same thing here, but Murray Brewster, again, he's the point person for defense at CBC, stated that the United States approved Canada's planned purchase of $220 million worth of light tactical vehicles. So this is one of the cases where some military procurement we're going to have to do will still come from the States. So this is probably not the ones from London, Ontario here. But according to him, the United States Department gave the green light Friday for Canada to buy more light off-road troop transport vehicles. The decision is likely to add to the existing political headache faced by the Liberal government, which has staked part of its reputation on making fewer defense purchases in the United States. The approval by the Defense Security Cooperation Agency involves a purchase of light tactical vehicles for the country's special forces under a program known as Next Generation Fighting Vehicles, or NGFV. The approval comes just a year after the Department of National Defense bought 90 joint light tactical vehicles for Canadian troops deployed in Latvia under a separate and distinct program. The latest planned purchase, when completed, amounts to about $220 million and is part of the overall effort to re-equip the Special Forces and Army writ large. The Liberal government campaigned last spring in part on diversifying Canadian defense purchasing away from the U.S. towards other allies. The most high-profile example was Prime Minister Mark Carney's insistence that the $27.7 billion plan to buy F-35 fighters from U.S. defense giant Lockheed Martin be reviewed. On Friday, when announcing a military pay increase, Carney said no decision to turn away from the long-anticipated fighter jet program had been made. A review undertaken by the Royal Canadian Air Force is still pending. There are other programs in the pipeline that could be equally troublesome from a political perspective in light of the ongoing trade war launched by U.S. President Donald Trump. Canada also intends to buy P-8 surveillance planes and multiple rocket launcher systems for the Army from the United States as part of the broader rearmament. The Special Forces off-road vehicles have been in the serious planning stages for a couple of years prior to the trade and political tensions with Washington. Last December, the federal government asked for the U.S. for permission to buy the vehicles. A spokesperson for the Defense Department said there are still hurdles before an actual purchase goes ahead. Neither the request to buy nor the recent approval, quote, commits Canada to purchase of the joint light tactical vehicle, said Andréane Poulain in a written statement. The federal government will review the acceptance of the offer. The federal government will review the acceptance and the offer to purchase. So this was a purchase that had or plans for it that had started way before any of this trade stuff and 51st state jabbering by Donald Trump, and is continuing. But the filing for the actual permission to go ahead and buy that happened afterwards. So this is something that you will often see on military files. If we're buying something from the United States, you're going to get the conservatives or that whole faction again saying, "Oh my God, elbows up, eh? Haha, chortle, chortle. I thought we were diversifying. Chortle, chortle, guffa, guffa, ha ha." But a lot of these processes, as we know, take a long, long time. So some of these purchases that we're making from the United States, are processes that might have started years ago, and that are coming to fruition now, or that are meeting some critical decision points now. And you're not just going to scrap all of those things because you still need the equipment, right? It's like that thing going on with the BC ferries. Pierre Poilievre really wants to have that billion-dollar loan because it would be going to a Chinese shipbuilding operation to be canceled, which is great as a point of principle. Hey, let's not give $1 billion to China. Okay, a lot of people would be down with that. But you also need a plan to get those ferries in the water in BC at the same time as they would have been delivered by that operation in China. Or else you're basically telling the people of British Columbia, because of a point of principle, you're going to have to deal with the current situation with ferries for a whole lot longer. And if the plan on the conservative side is to necessarily have them built in Canada, then we would have to actually build a shipyard for that first before we can actually build the ferries. And that's a long time for a province who is basically has access to loan to go forth with a purchase now, to wait even longer to ensure that people and goods can be traveled and transported as needed in the BC area using the ferry system for years to come. Right? These types of purchases are planned several years before. Hopefully, if the planning has been done correctly, they are actually needed. So as traffic grows, those additional pieces of equipment come online, and that there isn't a gap where you're trying to MacGyver things and keep things going with Scotch tapes and Band-Aid. I should say Scotch tape and Band-Aids instead. Put the plural on the wrong one there. So yeah, there are certain purchases you might be able to interrupt and get other places more quickly and that type of stuff, so that you don't have an operational gap. And then there are other ones that have started a certain time before, and just because we arrive at critical decision points or critical process points now, doesn't mean we necessarily just out of spite or to a point of pride reject them. But when we don't do that, it does necessarily create a military opportunity for anybody who was saying, "Hey, I thought we weren't doing this anymore," to come up and smugly go, "Ho ho." That's just going to come with the territory, and people will just you have to understand the civics of it, right? Military procurement, it's a problem for a reason, and the reason is that it takes too long. So if we're hearing about things now, it's probably something that took too long. to get where we are now, which necessarily, logically, means started way before Trump 2.0. All right. Let's see. Do we have anything else here, kids and cubs, today with regard to that? I think I might have one more. Yes, I do. Here we go. One of the other things that we had been talking about that might be a good way to get some money out the door has something to do with drone technology. And here, according to Evan Dyer, and this is posted August 6th, so still a couple days ago, he says here, it's been 24 years since what is widely considered the first lethal drone strike, a Predator UAV attack on an Al Qaeda vehicle convoy in Afghanistan, just 9 weeks after the September 11 attacks. The strike killed Mohammed Atef, son in law of Osama bin Laden and head of the group's military operations, and made clear to all that 21st century warfare was going to see a large role for unmanned aerial vehicles, UAV, which is a fancy way to say drones. Large, expensive fixed-wing drones such as the Predator and Reaper still have their place. Canada has ordered a fleet of similar drones expected to be up and running in 2033. But the war in Ukraine has shifted the focus away from multi-million-dollar UAVs to much cheaper, smaller, and sometimes disposable drones. Like militaries around the world, the Canadian Armed Forces saw the Ukraine conflict transform from what is largely an artillery war just 18 months ago into a nightmarish contest between buzzing machines and the operators who guide them. Quote, it's revolutionizing a part of the battle space, says Royal Canadian Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Chris Labbe, who heads the force's Joint Counter-Uncrewed Aircraft Systems Office. Quote, you'll see different scholars or analysts talk about how the air littoral, really the space between the ground and 1,000 meters in the air, may be above that. That space used to be dominated by helicopters, said Labbe, but the Nagorno-Karabakh. Oh my God, I don't know what that one is. Let's try that again. But the Nagorno-Karabakh war and then the war in Ukraine have accelerated advances in drone warfare. I believe that Nagorno-Karabakh war, if I'm not mistaken, is the thing going on between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Yep, it is. My God, it's amazing what happens in that filing cabinet in my mind there. Yes, there was some clashes between Armenia and Azerbaijan back in the 2020 time. I think we had... I think we had just started the show and we had reported a little bit on that at some point. And that's another conflict in which Donald Trump is sticking his nose in to try and claim that he's going to be a peacemaker somehow. There's both of them are former Soviet USSR republics, and Putin had tried to intervene in that as well a couple of times. Oh, okay. It's nice to know that the old noggin's still working. So getting back to the story, and no longer spending some time being proud of myself here. That space used to be dominated by helicopters, said Labbe, but the Nagorno-Karabakh war and then the war in Ukraine have accelerated advances in drone warfare. The Canadian military is determined to keep pace with that change, he said. Nearly everything about smaller drones represents a change in direction in military thinking and industrial production. For decades, procurement has trended towards even higher prices and longer timelines. The F-35, for example, is a weapon system so complicated and expensive that multiple countries had to buy in and invest in advance. Drones don't need giant factories with sophisticated production lines. Pardon me. Sorry, I just yawned there. Drones don't need giant factories with sophisticated production lines. Instead, said Tom Barton of Jane's Defense in London, Ukraine has decentralized production into small workshops. Quote, some of the ways that guys in their garages are actually streamlining 3D printing and turning out quantities of these UAVs you wouldn't have thought was imaginable up until now, Barton said. He says the Russians have also farmed out 3D printing and fabricating to an army of home-based engineers. Their wide distribution makes it impossible to shut production down through bombing or missile strikes. Labbe says the Ukrainian drone builders are also experiment and share results, driving rapid improvements in surveillance and strike capabilities. Quote, the speed at which that innovation happens is absolutely blistering. Labbe said that to further spur innovation, Ukraine has instituted a reward system for frontline units whereby those who have more success receive points that they can use to buy new drone-related kits online. The Canadian forces would like to capture some of that same innovative energy, and to that end have issued a series of challenges to Canadian drone makers through the program Innovative Solutions Canada, ISC. The industry has noticed the change, says Philip Reese, CEO of Indro Robotics, in both the amount of money up for grabs and how quickly the government reviews submissions. Quote, they come back with some pretty well thought out questions, and then it moves through testing first and then procurement. A challenge currently posted by ISC invites makers to submit, quote, an attributable interceptor drone capable of attacking enemy drones from several hundred grams to several hundred kilograms that can operate from just above ground level to altitudes over 3,000 meters and reaching speeds in excess of 200 kilometers per hour. The language of the challenge invites designers to seek, quote, creative and innovative solutions for drone interception beyond contacting their target with an explosion. Examples of that new approach have already been tested at a site called the Sandbox in Suffield, Alberta, including a successful test of a directed energy weapon that caused a target drone to burst into bright green flames in midair and crash to the ground. Another interceptor drone tested at the Sandbox hovered above its target and dropped a net, ensnaring the propellers of the target drone. Another area of furious research and development inspired by the Ukraine war is the command and control of UAVs in a battle space where radio and even GPS signals are easily jammed. The Russians were the first to realize that they could defeat jamming by attaching spools of fiber optic cable to their drones. Command signals travel along that hair-thin filament rather than through the air where they can be jammed. Ukraine recently flew a drone with a 50-kilometer long fiber optic spool. Those innovations in turn drove innovation in the counter-drone world, said Reese. Quote, now they're doing more kinetic response, he said. Radio and GPS jamming just doesn't cut it anymore when you've got a drone that's got fiber optics. So that's definitely been moving forward very fast. Canadian drone development is not confined to the air. The Navy adapted its Hammerhead naval gunnery targets to create an explosive-laden marine attack drone. It was tested successfully and explosively last month. Labe said Ukrainian drone and anti-ship missile operations in the Black Sea are an incredible achievement that speaks highly of the potential of uncrewed systems. He says a current interest is in the area of mid-sized aerial drones weighing hundreds of kilograms that can evacuate a casualty on a stretcher or supply forward troops from rear areas. Wow. Jeez. That would be some pretty interesting technology. And Reese said his company is experimenting with land-based drones that can move faster than a car and work with air-based drones for reconnaissance. They can also go ahead and set up mesh networks so secure communications that can't be hacked and can be moved forward, he said. One of the advantages of drones is that they often cost a lot less than their targets, acting as a battlefield equalizer against opponents with greater strength in vehicles, aircraft, and vessels. Barton said drones in Ukraine have been used to knock out elements of expensive Russian air defense systems, as well as a well-equipped drone force with sufficient skilled operators would make even the strongest opponent hesitate to launch an armored attack. He said that for a country like Canada with a vast borders to defend, drones are potentially a great solution. Drones could also offer a way into European defense procurement agreements that Canada would like to access if Canada can develop an industry that produces drones desirable for European militaries. Quote, now is the inflection point between drones and robots and AI, said Reese. Canada knows we are. You can see by all of the responses, commercial and government, that now is the time to move forward. Reese said Canada is in a strong position partly because Transport Canada has been ahead of most national regulators in recognizing the potential of the industry and creating conditions permissive enough to allow drone use to flourish. Quote, we've got the skills here, we've got the know-how, and we've certainly got the need, he said. So if we're already ahead in drones and robots and we can keep pace with AI, putting those together definitely makes us an international powerhouse. So there you go, kits and cubs. That might be one of the avenues to get some of that $9 billion out the door, and also again to create a new and burgeoning industry for Canada to diversify its markets and diversify its trade with other nations, and to replace some of that trade with the United States. It's going to take several initiatives of this kind spread out over a bout of time, but it seems that, again, we are already in the field and trying to make certain things happen. All right. Kits and Cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we loved making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring, and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really appreciate it when you do, especially when you share some content of yours, a thought, or even just a I like this as you are sharing it because you are influencers in your circle. And that type of advertising is priceless. So thank you for all your help in that. Now, Kids and Cubs, if you would like us to help you, because, hey, you might be a busy person who's on the go, who still wants to be informed, however. Well, you don't need to worry because thanks to the generous contribution of the Ray Girl, boom, we have Podpage. And if you scan that QR code, or if you're listening and you go to podpage.com/the true north eager beaver with a hyphen between each one of those words, when you go there and click subscribe, you can get the ears only version of our show, the podcast version. So if you need to be on the go, well, you just pop some earbuds in your ears and you take us with you because we are portable. We make it easy because we like to help. So if you just click on subscribe, when you do, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, direct into your podcast feed, that's all that you need to do. We're there just waiting for you when you're ready for us. There we go. Now, Kits and Cubs, if you would like to help us, because we do very much appreciate your help, well, hey, we've got some ways for you to do that. The first way you can do that is by hearing the call of Kits, Elaine, and Cassie and taking your surfboard and making your way down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where there you will find 3 buttons: like, share, and subscribe. If you give them a little tickle, that makes us very happy, and it also helps us with the algorithm. So thank you very much for that little bit of assistance. Now, Kids and Cubs, if you like what we do and would like to encourage us to do more, well, you can help with that too with an enthusiastic expression of encouragement, otherwise known as a tip. Watch me shake it. I'm shaking it. See me? See me shake? Yeah, shaking for tips. All right, Kids and Cubs, if you would like to offer us a tip because you like what we do and you would like to offer your favorite beaver a mug of hot chocolate or your favorite grizzly a cup of bitter and dark coffee to say, attaboy, attabeaver, attagrizzly, you've done well. Thank you so much. We would appreciate that so much. And you can do that by visiting our coffee page. That's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. Or if you scan the QR code that has just appeared there, Kids and Cubs, that will bring you right there. No donation is too small. Do not think, oh, well, I don't have enough. It's not worth it. Trust me, we appreciate every single nickel. And all of it is very helpful. And we thank you for your contributions, and we are so grateful that you make them. Now, Kids and Cubs, if you are still doing Buy Canada and you want to avoid the US CE tech bros that take a cut of your donation, well, hey, we've got a way to do that, and that is by making a direct bank transfer, Kids and Cubs. If you use our email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, and send your donation there, it goes from your bank to our bank. The transaction is 100% Canadian. Nothing goes to the tech pros, and we also get 100% of your donation. So it's win-win-win. And we thank you so much if you are able to contribute that way. Now, that email address, truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com, is also where you can write to us because we love to hear from you, especially if you can't donate financially. Well, then we want to know what you think about the show. Do you like it? Are there things that we could do better? Is there some suggestions for guests? Hopefully, you've liked our most recent interviews. We try to bring you a wide diversity of people and different topics. But hey, Kids and Cubs, we're always open to suggestion. We want to know what you think because this is your show too. And truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com is where you can send us all of that. Now, Kids and Cubs, if you would like to reach us via our socials at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge and also on the Jitter, True North Eager Beaver on Facebook, which is our original home, or of course, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, either live with the best damn fam in all of podcasting, or on your own time, right down here in in the comments section, you can leave us your thoughts. We do read absolutely everything, even though we're not able to get back to you. And we thank you for taking the time to write us. You have a lot of things to do. And when you give us a little bit of your attention, it does provoke a warm fuzzy. And please know, kids and cubs, even though we're not able to answer everything, we do read everything. And all of your contributions, either financial or in word, go back into the show in order to make it better. So we hope that you notice that when we do present our content to you. And we thank you so very much for your support and your generosity. We would not have been able to continue to do this for as long if it were not for you. And we are so happy that you are in our corner. We are blessed to have you and very, very grateful. All right, kids and cubs, because democracy is something that you do. Hey, if you happen to be living in the province of Manitoba, well, you have a provincial by-election coming up in August, on August 26th, and that is very, very important. So, kids and cubs, please do what you need to do to find out about the candidates that are there and whether or not they might need some help, right? Phone banking, canvassing, or maybe at the election returns office, there might need some help as well. So if you are affected by the by election that's been announced for the riding of Spruce Woods in the province of Manitoba for August 26th, that's a way that you can do some democracy. Now, kids and cubs, another way that you can do democracy is because the federal by election for Battle River Crowfoot will be taking place on August 18th. That's a very, very important day. And yeah, you can help some of the independent candidates, like Bonnie Critchley, for example, or Sarah Spanier, if you enjoyed our interview with her. And you can do that by contacting their campaigns and making a donation. If you had not reached the maximum donation during the last election campaign of $1,750 for a candidate, then you have some contribution room and you can help them. And as we keep on saying, in a district that is as large as Battle River Crowfoot, over 52,000 square kilometers, or around that amount, I shouldn't say over, but about that amount, a little bit of gas money goes a long way. For Bonnie Critchley in particular, you can send something to donations at bonniecritchleyindependent.com. There you go. And of course, if you live in the area, there might need some help with get out the vote efforts on the day of, on the 18th. So if you have a car and can offer people rides, maybe you want to contact some of the offices of these campaigns and say, I can help if you need to, or if you need it, I should say. So, yeah, kids and cubs, if you're able to help, please do stand up and do help. And do make sure, however, that you are indeed going to vote, because very, 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 very important that you do so, kids and cubs. Extremely important. Kids and cubs, thank you so much for being wonderful there. And oh, yes, let's not forget as well, kids and cubs, also very important, if you happen to be living in Alberta, Elections Alberta has approved the referendum question on Alberta remaining a part of Canada, but organizers must now collect just under 294,000 signatures and probably more just to be safe to move the question to an actual ballot. So please go to www.forevercanadian.ca to volunteer, donate, become an official canvasser, or pledge to sign the petition when it comes your way, or even pre-pledge a donation if that's something that you would like to do. And again, I'm going to put the address up there for you, www.forever-canadian.ca. Mr. Thomas Lukasik does need your help. And again, as we keep on saying, if you can help, please do. That would mean the world. All right. Words of wisdom, kits and cubs. Again, not particularly good on the wisdom. That's more Mr. Grizzly's department. Sure wish he was here for it. But I'm just going to say, get some sleep. That's all I got for you today because I didn't get enough last night. And as you could tell, had a little difficulty managing my mouth today. So that's my advice. Get some sleep. That's the extent of my wisdom today. I'm sorry. Wish I could do better for you. Kids, it could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. And now, if you would, please, if you'd like to help your favorite beaver a little at the count of 3, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock, would definitely make my day brighter, especially if you put a little heart and soul in it. So on the count of 3, kits and cubs, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. 1, 2, 3. See? That's all I need to do. I just need to ask you for a little bit of heart and soul, and you give me so much. Of course, I must oblige. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, kids and cubs, a little bit of Canadians who make us proud. All of our Canadian athletes competing at the Canada Summer Games. Athletes from every single province have now picked up at least 2 medals each for each of their provinces, and competition continues. No medals yet for the territories, but lots of firsts there with some of the territories sending teams and competitors in certain sports for the very first time. And that's a good sign to show that their sports programs are developing as well. And hopefully by the time the games are over, there will be some hardware for everyone all across the country at some point. Also, kits and cubs, because I'm still buzzing from the victory of Victoria Mboko, who did take a pass on the Cincinnati Open, as did Naomi Osaka after playing in the final. The first day of actual competition at the Cincinnati Open had started before the tournaments in Montreal and Toronto had finished. It seems that that's not a situation that will repeat itself next year because there will be a little bit of additional time. This year, the schedule was a little compressed, and that might help some people because, as we know, at the National Bank Open, Leila Annie Fernandez had just won the City Open out in Washington, D.C., and then it was a very, very tight turnaround for the first match. And unfortunately, her preparation wasn't all it could be, and it got bounced quickly. Fortunately, however, in Cincinnati, Felix Auger-Aliassime, who didn't have a great tournament here in Canada, being bounced in the second round, but his first match, because he was a seeded player, has managed to advance to the quarterfinal in Cincinnati. However, he faces a very, very, very steep hill for the quarterfinal match because he will be playing world number 1 Yannick Sinner, who had just won Wimbledon and might be feeling good about himself because he took the week from Montreal off to sort of make sure that he took some time to rest after winning Wimbledon and enjoy his win, and of course do all the media and stuff that takes place after that. So hopefully this being Sinner's first hard court tournament after moving from the grass. That could give a little bit of an opening for Felix Auger-Aliassime, who has been playing a little more hard court, and of course was victorious at the Hopman Cup along with Bianca Andreescu not too long ago. And maybe has a little bit of wind in his sails here. And so maybe in a perfect and ideal world, this is ideal or a good setup for an upset, but probably not. Of course, Yannick Sinner already did a number on a Canadian, already taking out Gabriel Diallo, which was his first time playing world number one in a previous round here. So hopefully that Felix could get the job done and create an upset over here. Also at that tournament, Gabriela Dabrowski, nation's number one female doubles player, who also had a tough tournament in Montreal, doing better here in Cincinnati with her partner Erin Routliffe, who has a Canadian connection but does play for New Zealand. But they've been advancing quite well and will be playing there today at 12:30. Also, Liam Draxel, Alex Galarneau, who both had some impressive runs at the National Bank Open, impressive performances, are playing at a tournament in Cancun, and hopefully they will do well to help advance their rankings. And there's a surprise in here. Cleve Harper, who's a double specialist, who isn't even ranked in the top 1,000 in singles, got through the qualification rounds to the main draw, which is pretty good. That should help him a lot. Unfortunately, the tennis gods were then cruel to him and placed him against, I think it is three-time Grand Slam champion Stan Wawrinka of Switzerland in his first match. So that might be very, very difficult for him, but a great experience. However, Drexel and Harper will be teaming up again in doubles in that tournament, and with a very good run, Liam Drexel could join Harper in the world's top 100 in doubles, and would be create a situation where Canada would have two men's players in the top 100 in the world in doubles with a good run here. So we wish them a lot of success. All right, kids and cubs, that's all I got for you today. Amour et bisous, and have a most beaverific day. And we will see you again tomorrow. All my love.